The fishing news is brought to you by Shoreline Insurance Agency.
Win the incredible Steigercraft, Evinrude, Lowrance Grand Prize Boat Package and more in the Fisherman's 2018 Dream Boat Fishing Challenge. Get the details at thefisherman.com. Plenty of big sea bass have been keeping rods bent since last Saturday's season opener around many parts of the island. Despite the 3-fish limit currently in place, sea bass have helped top off catchers of fluke, porgies, and ling. Big stripers are still coming from the bunker schools, with more 50-pounders reported this week as the fish work their way east. Very good bass fishing off the North Fork, with fish to 40 pounds at night and smaller fish to 20 pounds during the day. Keep an eye on Montauk during this full moon period, as the rips are due to light up with big fish. Fluke fishing in most areas continue to see a better percentage of quality keepers compared to recent years, and porgies remain a sure bet all around the island. On the east end, Captain Dave on the Viking said that Monday's AM trip produced very good catches of big sea bass in the 3 to 4 pound class. He finished off the trip with a stop at the lighthouse for a boat limit of porgies. Captain Dave on the ebb tide said fluke fishing continues to pick up steam with good numbers of quality fish. Sunday's trip saw at least 40 keepers to 8 pounds, along with quite a few in the 5 to 6 pound range. And to spice up the action, a bunch of nice sea bass as well. The North Fork has the edge with stripers, as the night bite has seen excellent action with fish into the 40-pound class. Strong day bite also, but the fish are smaller, ranging to 20 pounds. Bucktails by day, eels by night, and keep an eye on Montauk, as this week's full moon could kick off some big fish action. The North Fork is also seeing solid fluke fishing and loads of porgies. Down on the South Fork, Shinnecock Bay continues to produce solid fluking in the shallows. According to Captain John on the Shinnecock Star, big bass are outside the inlet on the bunker schools, and Lanny from Muller's Landing and crew scored 15 bass to 44 pounds east of the inlet. On the South Shore, big stripers are still around, with a number of 50-pounders caught this past week out of Fire Island and Moriches. Many of the bunker schools have no fish on them, but when you do find the right school, most of the fish are in the 40-pound range or better. Captain Al Lorenzetti found them, of course, and located a nice body of fish between Moriches and West Hampton, then stopped and limited out on sea bass on the way back home. Fluke fishing in the bays remains pretty consistent, but the key is fishing the last couple hours of the incoming and the start of the ebb. A 10-pound fluke was caught on the Captree Fishing Pier and weighed in at Captree Bait and Tackle. Brendan at Captree Bait and Tackle said boats targeting sea bass have been doing a great job on the fish and quickly limiting out. To the west, Captain Anthony on the Captain Lou 7 reported an excellent day with fluke this past Monday, with quite a few fares limiting out on the full-day trip. White gulp has been the hot bait, according to the skipper. On the Superhawk, Captain Steve reported very good sea bass action, along with a mix of fluke, porgies, and ling. A 7.5-pound fluke topped last Monday's catch. There was a tie in last Sunday's Duke of Fluke tournament. Both Victor Lacero and Anthony Puglisi weighed in a fluke that hit the scale at 8.41 pounds. The junior division went to 9-year-old Nick Inamortada with a 3-pound fish. Further west, Captain Dave told of excellent porgy fishing on the evening trips and good fluking on the day trips. The Lady Flamingo has been finding plenty of blues and some bass, with some of the blues hitting the 17 to 20 pound mark. Bucktail Bob scored the biggest chopper of the week with a 22-pound slammer. Yesterday in the Back Bays and Reynolds Channel, News 12 meteorologist Rich Van Olen found plenty of schoolie bass, 20 to 27 inches on topwater plugs, and also lots of fluke action on bucktails tipped with gulp, but no keepers. Up on the North Shore, Rich at Eleanor Tackle in Pelham reported a really good night bite with fish up to 40 pounds, taking chunks in the Western Sound, and loads of blues in the area as well. No problem filling porgy limits at Mamaroneck, Rye Playland, New Rochelle, and Execution Light. In the Mid-Island area, Rob from High Hook Bait and Tackle told of plenty of bass from Cold Spring Harbor to Eaton's Neck, the Triangle, Buoy 15, Buoy 32A, and Huntington Bay on live and chunked bunker. Porgy fishing is also hot. He weighed in a fish to almost 5 pounds. Brad at Campsite Sports reported fluking is strong at the Brush Pile and Eaton's Neck on high-low rigs with gulp or spearing, and even some squid on there too. The James Joseph had 2 8-pounders on Sunday's trip.
The big news in a relatively quiet week in the surf was a shot of big stripers to 50 pounds that wound up tight to the beach on Bunker in Southampton on Friday. According to Canada Tightline's tackle in Sag Harbor, the oceanfront near Sag in Maine lit up with bass from the teens to 50 pounds at first light Friday and into the early afternoon as the fish pushed schools of bunker into the wash. Some surfcasters were snagging and dropping, but others took fish on large topwater plugs. Paulie at Paulie's Bait and Tackle said bass from shorts to teens are being taken on night tides on the north and south sides on needlefish, darters, and SP minnows. Bluefish are around during the day on the outgoing, taking poppers and pencil poppers. On the North Shore, chunking after dark continues to produce some bass in the 20 to 30 pound class from the stretch between Comsat and Asheroken. Lots of sand eels along the Smithtown Bay shore area have generated some decent action with small blues and bass. Some bass and small blues also reported from Rocky Point to Cedar Beach in Mount Sinai. Now let's check in with Hawaiian Dan.
Thanks, Tim. Aloha from Hawaiian Dan of TalkFishTV.com, reporting for the Fisherman. And I gotta tell you, this has been a great week for fishing. We are full force into the fishing season and the bite is on. The sound has come completely alive with every kind of bait fish that you could possibly imagine. Shorts and keepers are showing up underneath. This week I had a chance to fish everywhere from West Meadow Beach to Crane's Neck Point and all the way down and up through Cedar Beach from the shore. I squeezed out every single second I could buy during my lunch break to try to catch some fish. As you can see from the video clips, there are a vast array of porgies, fluke, schoolie stripers, cocktail blues, and of course, an occasional sea robin. With that sweet fish, the black sea bass season opening up last week, my friends are reporting that they are limiting out on their catch within the first 1 to 2 hours every single time they're out. So there's plenty of fish to go around, and hopefully next week I'll have some of those to show for you. So until next week, this is Hawaiian Dan from TalkFishTV.com signing out for the Fisherman. Aloha!
The bluefin bite is still red hot about 10 miles northeast of the Bacardi wreck. The word is Joe Shoots, rigged with ballyhoo trolled from a green stick, is getting the job done. Here is Teddy and Teddy Prager, father and son team, with a nice fish from their Tuesday trip. Now let's hear from senior editor Fred Golofaro on understanding tides and currents.
Hey, thanks, Tim. And if you plan on doing any fluke fishing in the bays or inlets this week, many of our report sources are emphasizing the fact that the best fishing is on the last of the incoming and the very start of the outgoing. In some areas, fishing outside of those prime tides can be nothing but a frustrating effort. The problem is that despite all our efforts to educate people on the difference between tides and currents, there still seems to be a lot of confusion about it. I just got a couple of calls again over the past couple of weeks from guys claiming that our tide tables were screwed up, our tide tables are off, and that's because they're fishing the current, but they're looking at tide tables. Tide is the rise and fall or vertical movement of the water. Current is the movement of water in and out of our bays, harbors, and inlets. The period between the current changing from in to out or out to in is called slack water. High slack is that period when the current stops coming in. In many areas, high tide and high slack times differ. Sometimes dramatically, in fact. In Fire Island Inlet, for example, the difference between tide and current is approximately 2 hours and 45 minutes. And that can vary a little bit depending on wind, excessive wind coming out of one direction for a while, excessive rains, storms, but basically it's 2 hours and 45 minutes. And it varies from area to area. That means with 2 hours and 45 minutes, that would mean if high tide is at noon, the current will continue to come in for another 2 hours and 45 minutes, making high slack 2:45 p.m. Again, every season I get calls complaining about the tide tables. This is the difference, and this is why I get those calls. The water needs time to work its way in and out of the bays, in and out of channels, around islands, and that's what accounts for the time difference. You can plan your fishing around current tables, or once you know the time difference between high tide and high slack, you can figure slack water based on the tide tables. Again, keep in mind that can vary a bit at times, but basically once you have that figured out, you'll know when high slack is, when low slack is, simply based on your tide tables in the area you fish.
Remember, like our video, subscribe to our YouTube page, and be a subscriber to the Fisherman magazine to be part of the Dream Boat contest. Until next week, this is Tim C. Smith for thefisherman.com.
Win the incredible Steigercraft, Evinrude, Lowrance Grand Prize Boat Package, and more in the Fisherman's 2018 Dream Boat Fishing Challenge. Get the details at thefisherman.com.